Well, hello, brothers and sisters. Hope all is well out there. Let me see here. Space. And I hope you can hear me okay out there. All right, we got Patty on. Just trying to get through a few bugs here and get things going. We'll wait for just a little bit. Hi, Jewel. Wonderful. I'm glad we're on here. There we go. I had a little bit of technical difficulties this morning or this afternoon here. So gonna cheers everybody. Thank you all for being on here this morning. Hi Jewel again. Um, Ivan, good morning, good afternoon. So we'll get started here with this Native Wellness Power Hour. Thank you all for joining this today here on. I think I can't even remember what number program we're on. We're over 320 so programs with the Native Wellness Institute. I think this is week 50 something, maybe 60. I should have been paying attention. But my name is Gene Tagaban. My Tlingit name is Gayal. I'm of the Dukdane Ton clan, Raven Freshwater Sockeye clan from Hoona, Alaska. The child of a Wishkatan Eagle Shark clan from Majuan in Juneau, Alaska. I'm Cherokee, Tlingit, and Filipino. It's so good that you're here. And again, this is the Native Wellness Institute Power Hour. We started these here Power Hours when at the close of the pandemic, when everything shut down, and all of our schedules just everything just started dropping, just like everybody else. And we were at a standstill. We didn't really know what to do, and so we thought we'd just start putting out these free programs, just to bring that wellness out there to people, because we realized that trauma that we've experienced is going to be re-triggered. And so we developed these power hours, and we have a YouTube channel as well on there. And so thank you for joining me today. And I'm just going to get started. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about grief and healing in the presence of grief. And before we get started here with that, I just want to sing a song here, and just to get our spirits prepared for what we're doing here. And so I ask you to, as we sing this song, just take a moment. Thank you for joining again. Just take a moment out of your day, your time, just to stop and reflect. Reflect on where you've come from, your ancestors. Our ancestors have dreamt us into existence. Here we are. Reflect on the land of your ancestors, where they came from. Or maybe it's a beautiful sunrise or sunset. Or maybe it's the waves on the beach, the sounds of the rivers, or the buzzing of the hummingbird that cruises by, back and forth, the call of the eagle, or the howl of the coyote, whatever it may be. Maybe it's the smell of mountain flowers, wild mountain flowers that come to your mind, whatever that might be. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about the whales. I love it when those whales come up and their tail flukes, their tail comes up and just gives you, and each tail is a signature telling you who they are. And so just take that time right now and just to bring yourself here. Call in your ancestors as well, and just simply say thanks. Simply say thanks. tears, good old tears, good old tears, good old tears. Oh, thank you. Thank you just for that moment. And I just needed that moment for myself here, just to get grounded, just to get centered, because our music is healing, eh? To sing our songs, and so much. I like to encourage people to learn a song from your tradition, wherever you're from, whoever you are. Learn a song from your traditions, and then that way, because oftentimes our minds get so filled up with words, with pictures, with other images, and our bodies get filled up with feelings, and there's a heaviness that comes onto us. It's like a blanket that has blanketed us of this heaviness. There's a story here in the Pacific Northwest here, and I just want to acknowledge, I forgot to do that. I'm here on the territories of the Coast Salish people, on the land of the Puyallup people here in the Pacific Northwest, in Ruston, Washington, in the city, within the city of Tacoma, Washington here. And so, but there's a story that they talk about how the sky starts falling down, and the people come together and they take the sticks and they hold the sky up, and they hold the sky up. Yeah, all working together to hold that sky up. And I'm just giving you just a little overview of that story, because it's when we talk about grief, it's like this blanket that has fallen and has fallen down upon us. It's a heaviness that has fallen down upon us. And sometimes it just smothers us and goes down upon us, our whole being, and encompasses our whole being. And we need help from our community. We need help from our other friends, family, our culture, our traditions, our song, our prayer, our spirituality. All of those aspects come in to help lift up that grief, lift up that heaviness, lift it up off of us, so that we're able to breathe. And when we talk about grief is it just encompasses everything of our life, because everything, grief comes in many forms, and a little definition of that grief is that, that physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual sorrow is that heaviness, that emptiness for that loss. Hey, thanks for telling me to speak up, because I need to speak up. All right. So I'm taking a look at the chats here, and I'll speak up a little bit more, so you could, because I could talk a little soft here. So I'll just speak up here. And so it's a heaviness of that loss of our people, and so oftentimes too, we think about that grief too as like the loss of a loved one. But grief can come in many forms. Grief can come into the loss of a job. Grief can come into the loss of a relationship with your coworkers, and since you lost that job, or a relationship that you're intimate, a relationship that you were involved with. And grief can come, you've changed your roles, especially this time. I see a lot of people grieving because the loss of job, but finances as well, loss of home, the scariness of losing their home, and scariness of losing their dreams. Your car, you wreck your car, and that too is a grief in itself. And as we age, man, I'm feeling that grief of as I age too. I feel that grief. And I'm not that young guy anymore. Yeah, our health, Sam says our health, and thank you for sharing in the chats too, because you are also, the experts in this. I'm just going to share with you a little bit of what I know, and about grief and healing, because we need to have that conversation. Rainbow Falls out here, how grief is a teacher. Once healed in a good way, yes, grief is a teacher. It's taught me many things, and so there's many forms of that grief that comes out, and of course the grief of a lost loved one as well. is a heaviness that's there. And and so when we talk about that grief too, just to define it as well. I'm going to pull up just a piece of paper here that help me take a look at some of these here things. But our grief, and our grief is, and we go through cycles, and we go through cycles, and it's called the grief cycle. And and when we go through that grief, we have a sense of denial. I want to share with you a little bit of my story. And our life is a story. Our life is a story. And our whole life story is put together by the moments in our story, our life. Like right now, we have a moment. This is a moment. And this moment will never ever happen again in the existence of the universe, this moment we have here. But even our grief comes, it's in a moment of our life. It's a moment, and it could be an intense moment, whatever that is that you're grieving. A brother out here says grief can also age you. Yeah, it sure can. But I just want to speak on, the grief that I've experienced. The grief that I've experienced. And the first thing that comes to mind is the grief of my cousin. And I'm talking about, a lost loved one. And this is kind of a heavy, deep grief. And I want to talk about this too now, is because during this pandemic, we've lost many loved ones, elders, relatives, cousins, aunties, uncles, moms, and dads. And I was talking to an elder from Southeast Alaska. And he was talking about how in our villages, in the reservations, communities, that we haven't been able to properly grieve, have memorials, have burials, have ceremony, get together, have feast. Get together amongst the shrinkage people. We used to have people who would come in and we'd help them grieve, and we would grieve together. We would hold each other. We would hug each other. We would weep and cry together during this time. And in our grief too, we would also laugh. We would laugh. And we would nap, sleep, eat, all these things. We haven't been able to do that. And so one reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because when things start opening up, when we're able to come together, when we're able to have memorials, feasts, ceremonies, we are going to experience a heaviness like that blanket over Indian country, over Turtle Island, that's affecting everybody, because everybody will start having these ceremonies all at the same time. And we've had a lot of loss. And so what can we do and to become aware of this grief, become aware of what's going to happen, with us, our communities, and how can we, what do we need to do? And so that's why I wanted to talk about this. And when I want to talk about the loss when I had, it's probably been about 6 years now, 7 years now, maybe longer than that, 10 years. I lost my cousin. And I lost him to an unexpected accident. And it was totally unexpected. Some of us have, we're waiting, disease, people get sick, whatever it may be. But this is totally unexpected. And I heard about the news when I was landing on the runway in New Mexico, Albuquerque. I was on my way to teach a workshop. And as soon as I landed, turned on my phone, and my phone just blew up. Your cousin died in an accident. There was an accident and your cousin didn't make it. He didn't make it. And at first I was like just blown away. I go, what? What? What are you talking about? And then as soon as I was able to, I started making phone calls. And sure enough, the first one I called was my mother. I called my mother. And sure enough, she gave me the news. And I was still in disbelief. I just said, thanks, Mom, and I sat in the airport by myself, just like I started weeping, tears coming down. And still, I was like this, and the first stage of that, our grievance cycle is that denial. And I was in total denial. I was like, no way, this can't be happening. I just saw him just a couple weeks ago. He was so alive, so vibrant, so excited about this new job that he got, so excited about his new family, about getting married, about his future was coming up. He was so excited about it, and now he's gone. And I was in total denial of it. And then I went and I did my work. And my coworkers were saying, are you okay? I told them about it. I said, okay, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm okay. And part of what made me okay was because I was in that denial. And then I got to a point where I was man, I just got pissed. I got angry. I was on my way back up to Alaska. And I remember walking through the airport, just almost stomping through the airport, just mad, angry. How could this have happened to such this kid who was just like so? I called him, hey cuz, and every time he called me, he says, hey cuz, and it would oftentimes be late at night, or if I was driving, and I needed somebody to talk to, I could call him up, hey cuz, hey cuz, and I was angry. I was just angry. I was pissed. I was mad that he was gone. That this happened. How could it happen to such a kid like this? Had everything going for him. And that anger came up and it just welled up. And I felt it, and sure, it came up, but, my denial was up here in my head. My denial was in my head. I was creating that denial in my head. But when it came to the anger, it moved down and it's centered in my chest, right? My chest. And it's centered right almost like in this here area right here in my solar plexus right here. It was a heaviness, a deep heaviness, and that's what that anger was. And then I got up to Alaska, saw my family, and it wasn't then where it really hit that this is true. This really happened. I saw his dad. I didn't talk to his mom because she was in such deep grief herself. But it was true. It was true. And then I went back up, denial, denial, denial. Then I went back to anger, anger, anger. And then I went to this place called bargaining. Man, I should have talked to him. I should have talked to him. I should have said something to him. I didn't agree with the job that he took, to be honest with you. It was a dangerous job, the work that he took, but he was excited about it. He had a passion about it, about knowing about it, working there, learning about it. And not only that, he was getting paid very good money so that he could provide for his family. Who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't take that opportunity? Who would not take that opportunity? But yet, there was part of me that when he told me about that job, I wanted to say, no, don't take that job. And that's this part I'm starting to bargain. I'm bargaining. I'm like going, God, I'm talking to God, Creator. Why did you let this happen? Started blaming somebody. Wanted to blame somebody else. And felt a little bit of guilt about it. I should have said something. Why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I spend more time with him? Why didn't I go fishing with him? Or ride our motorcycles together. Play basketball more. And so I'm going through all this whole cycle of it too. Grief, anger, bargaining, guilt, even a little depression. And they say that you have this here cycle, and you go through the cycle. And sometimes people look at this cycle, this grief cycle, that it's just like this cycle that's smooth. Oh, you're just going to do this. Then this is the next step. 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 No. You're like going from one, you're jumping from one to the next, 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 and you're just bouncing around. And the grief cycle doesn't look like this smooth picture. It looks like this, jumbled up together. Your grief is going back and forth, up and down, up and down, back and forth. And that's normal. So if you're going through that grief, even now, and you're going through that grief cycle, and you're just going back and forth, jumping back and forth in your grief, and you think there's something wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with you. Each one of us, everyone's grief is different. And I'm here to say that. I just want to say that your grief is your grief. Your grief is valid, how you feel for this loss, even if it's a loss of a job. You're grieving. Loss of a loved one. And so many people, loss of a pet. So many people are like, oh, it's just a dog or it's just a cat. Man, those pets become your family. Those pets become your family. And so even through this time, I've had to come to a place of acceptance. Acceptance with the death of my cousin. Acceptance with the ending of a relationship. The loss of a job, or just me quitting a job. The loss of my co-workers at that job. Shoot, man, I grieved over because I sold a motorcycle that I loved. I shouldn't have sold it. I'm still kicking myself, because I sold this motorcycle. It was an awesome bike. Still think about it. Material things. Who the heck can grieve over a motorcycle? But grief is strange, man. Grief is strange. It affects our health. I'm just taking a look at the chats here. Jewel, thank you for being on. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge this too. Our grief every day for our MMIW brothers and sisters. And so that historical grief as well. The grief that our ancestors went through. And that gets passed on from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. Have you ever wondered why you do something, you react to something, and you don't know why? And that could be unresolved grief. That your mother went through, or your grandmother, or your great-grandmother, or great-great-grandmother went through. And it's getting passed on. It's getting passed on, and it's getting passed on. And so our MMIW brothers and sisters, our relatives, that affects each and every one of us. Even affects us unconsciously. Unconsciously. So there's our conscious part of us that we're thinking about. We think about it, and it's right there in front of us. But then there's that unconscious part of us that just affects us. We constantly hear it. I mean, when you're on the news, when you're on the media, heck, in this country, we've lost over 500,000 people to this pandemic. And that grief, even though they're not related to us, we still hear it, and we grieve for that loss. It affects us. It affects us. And so with our MMIW brothers and sisters, yeah. A relative put in, her grief has been in my life for the past 6 months. I lost my husband 36 years ago and my mom within hours of each other, unexpectedly. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you for being on here. And I just want anybody who's lost somebody recently too, I just want to acknowledge that your loss. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for your strength. And even when you don't feel strong, thank you for your vulnerability and your courage. And your courage as you're going through this. As you're going through this, each and every one of you, I just want you to know that there's people praying for you. You don't even know who they are. I mean, I've been out there praying for people. I don't even know who I'm praying for. I'm just praying for them for their loss. I'm praying for the doctors and the nurses. I'm praying for all those who are in the hospitals. But I'm praying for you. And just so, that's what we do in Indian country. We pray for each other. We can't be with each other, but we're there praying for each other. And so, I'm sorry for your loss. Another relative out there lost their twin brother. And there's a lot to process. And sometimes it's not even this pandemic. Sometimes it's just a tragic, violent event. And so I just want to acknowledge that. I'm just taking a look at all this. And so just wanted to acknowledge our relatives who have lost somebody, or lost a job, or lost a home, or a pet. Ganesh, thank you for being here. Thank you. And so during all this loss, we're like this eagle feather. We're like this feather. And I want to just tell you that whenever you see that, I was taught, whenever you see that eagle is doing circles in the sky. Yes, prayers up. That eagle is opening up that pathway for you to send your heaviness up there. Your prayers, your wishes, your hurts, whatever it is, opening it up. That circle is opening it up to our Creator. And these are just traditional teachings that were taught to me. And our Creator is that eagle's flying in the sky. Take that opportunity, because that eagle might be doing it just for you. You might be in the middle of a city and you look up and nobody else is looking up, but you see that eagle or you see that hawk, whatever it is. And take that opportunity just to say, thank you. My heart's heavy. Help me heal. Help my family heal, my children, or their children, And then you'll see that eagle fly off. Because when it comes to grief, we're like this feather. We have the male side and female side. But in that grief, we have that denial, the anger, the hurt, the frustration that's there. And not only is it that frustration, it's like, we have anxiety, irritability, lack of sleep. Some of you might be eating more, drinking more, and all these things that are on here. And we just get tore up just like this feather, this sacred feather. And I know some of you are thinking to yourself, like, what is he doing to that feather? I pray with this feather. And sometimes I do this. Because I want to ask you, and put it in the chats too, I want to ask you this question. How do we heal? We can touch on the grief. We can be in the grief. We can focus on being tore up. We can focus on, all those things about, the worry, the frustration, the irritability, the hurt, the harm, the loneliness, the hopelessness, and all those things. We can focus on all these things. The lack of sleep. We can focus on it. Just being mad. We can focus on those things and pay attention to that, or we can start thinking about healing as well. How do we heal? How do we heal? One thing I'm going to put down is like our culture and our traditions have in place ways of healing. Prayer. Yeah. Amongst our culture, amongst the Shinkic people, if it's a raven that is going down, it is the eagles that will come in and they'll hold them up. And they will say that, I have laid this blanket down for you. I will here to support you, to catch your tears. It's as if a tree that has fallen in the forest, and we are here to catch you and hold you, my brothers and sisters. Our cultures have in place these ways of healing and grieving. And to find out where you are from, your culture, your traditions, and how did they do things? How did they do things? We sing. How else do we heal? I want to take a look at this. Believe in our traditional ways, yep. One thing I want to share with you is breathing, getting outside and just taking a breath. When I was grieving for my cousin that was lost, he died in that accident, I went up to the mountain. And I had my skis on and I was headed down. Headed down the mountain, and I just couldn't breathe. And I don't know how many times I've been down this mountain, this slope, but I just couldn't breathe. And I just laid on the snow, on the snow, and I was just trying to catch my breath. And I was just wondering what is going on. And then I went to an elder, a teacher of mine, and I told her what was going on. And she said, well, because you're grieving. We hold our grief in this area, in our lungs, our breath, in this here, our chest area. And I was grieving. I couldn't breathe. So one way to heal that grief is to breathe. Go outside and just take deep breaths and let them out. Walk. I see in the chat here that we have talking circles. Talk with others, talk with relatives, talk with friends. And allow yourself also to feel. If you have to cry, cry. If you have to weep, weep. If you have to go outside in the woods and just scream and yell, then go out in the woods and scream and yell. Grab your drum and start drumming as hard as you can, and just start singing. And even if you don't know a song, just keep drumming and drumming and drumming and drumming. Because what grief is an energy. Grief is a presence. We think that grief is just a thing. No, or grief is just an emotion. Grief is encompassing of all those things. It's a thing, it's emotion, it's a presence. It's a spirit unto itself. And grief can encompass you and take over your whole life. We gotta heal. How do we heal? Find somebody else to talk it out with. Pray. Prayer. Sometimes I've gone through my whole day, and my whole day is a prayer. How about you? I'll go to the water. And oftentimes in my grief too, I will just start thinking in memory thinking about the good times. My cousin, thinking about him. Yeah, I lost him, but I loved playing basketball with him. I loved playing music with him. He was a musician. He liked to play guitar. I remember the time when he asked me, "Hey, cuz, hey, can you make me a flute?" I probably made a handful of flutes from scratch, just from the log. Each one I gave away, and one of those flutes that I made, beautiful, beautiful flute, beautiful. Best flute I've ever made to this day. And I gave it to him. And the excitement that I saw on his face and his eyes when he just took that flute, he just said, "No way." I said, "Here you go, cuz. This flute's for you." And he took it. He didn't even know how to play it. But he just took it and he just held it. And he just held it in his hands. He didn't even try to play it. Then he handed it to me. "You play it for me." And so I played this flute for him. And and I never heard him play it. I never heard him try it. But I know he had it with him. He would just carry it around with him. A good memory. Think about those good memories that you have of those ones you've lost. Those good times. And talk it out. And maybe if you can't talk it out to another friend, family member, or anonymous person on the other end of the phone, go talk it out with the trees. Go talk it out with the water, the mountains. Even if you're in the middle of the city or just walking around the block, there's trees around, but also our air is an ancestor. Our air, the very air that we breathe. That when we grieve, it affects our lungs in this area. Our air, our breath is an ancestor. Just talk it out. Just say it. And if you're walking down the street and people are looking at you and just think you're a little bit crazy, that's okay, because grief makes you a little crazy. It's okay to be a little crazy sometimes. It's part of healing. It's part of the process, part of getting through it. Part of coming to that place of acceptance. I've accepted my cousin is gone. I have an uncle who's in his stages of his end of life stages. I've accepted that soon he's going to be gone. When he's gone, is it going to hurt? Yeah, it's going to hurt. But part of my comfort too is my belief system. What's your belief system? My belief system is that my ancestors are already there to greet him. My ancestors or his ancestors are there, and mine, to greet him, to take him home, to be with his family, his friends. That's a deep belief I have for myself. What is your belief systems? What do you believe in? And does it work for you, or are you just believe in it just because somebody said so? Because grief will make you, and force you to evaluate who you are, take a look at yourself. Yeah. And sometimes, although my uncle isn't gone yet, there's like this thing is called anticipatory grief. Anticipatory grief, where, they haven't gone yet, but it's going to come. And so in our minds we start playing out the whole process. In our minds we play out the whole process. And one day I'm going to be gone. One day. Hope not soon, Creator. I just saw a post here, Julianne Fraser, in many ways grief is sacred. Yes, no. In many ways grief is sacred. No, grief is sacred. Death is sacred. Life is sacred. That's one thing, we're guaranteed in this world, is that we come into this world, and one day we will leave it, the physical form. And grief is just, it's an energy, man. It's a presence. And some of us, we let it just, again, blanket us. And as it blankets us, how are we going to lift it up? How are we going to lift it up? And sometimes, too, it's like people call on us to help. And I've been there, and sometimes I don't know what to say. So I don't say anything. I just sit there and listen. Sometimes I'll sing a song, because it's weird. It can be odd. It can be strange, because what do we say? And then sometimes we just try to say whatever we think that's going to comfort them. But sometimes it's just about being there. Being there. And maybe you, instead of that blanket of that grief that's hanging down over them, maybe you are the blanket of hope. Maybe you are that blanket of hope that's there just for a moment, just even if it's a moment, to hold up that blanket of grief so it's not down, hanging heavy on our relative or our friend. Maybe you are that blanket of hope, just to be there, just for a moment, because sometimes that's all we need. Just help me, give me just a moment here of relief, just a moment. Thank you. Thank you. But if we start healing, things will come back together. If we take time and focus on healing, we can focus on the grief. I'm not saying don't focus, don't grieve, but think about the healing as well. And even this here part that's in the tip right here, that's all ratted up a little bit, and there's some parts that just won't go together. Those are our scars, and we all have scars. And we all have scars. We all have scars. And that helps us build character. That gives us strength, because you know what? Sometimes when we make it through our grief, somebody else is going to need us. I read this thing where it said that our hardships, our hurts, and our grief are the survival guide for someone else. Our hardships, our grief is the survival guide for somebody else. Because as we get through our grief, guaranteed somebody else is going to feel it. And our story is that survival guide for somebody else. I have a relative on here talked about celebration of life ceremony that we haven't been able to get to and go to. And again, when it does happen, there'll be a blanket. But what can we do to help ourselves become strong? Where am I at here? And so with that, I just want to say, hey, everyone, thank you for joining in here at this moment, at this time right now. And this is Gene Tagaban with the Native Wellness Institute and our Power Hours. And today we're just talking about healing in the presence of grief, and how do we heal? How do we heal? And so something I want to do right now, I just want to sing a song, or maybe I'll play my flute. And those of you in the chats, just put the name or your relationship to this person. Maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your cousin, uncle, teacher. Put it in the chat. Just to acknowledge these beings. Some of us, we have relatives, we can't say their names until maybe a year later, but we'll just say, hey, my cousin or my uncle. Put it in the chat. And those of you who are watching and you're not on the chat or anything, and you're just listening, just bring to your mind, bring to your pictures in your mind, or maybe even just say their name out loud, and just that we may be grieving for. Maybe you're even grieving for the loss of your job or your pet, your dog or cat, whoever, or whatever it is you might be grieving for. And just because what we're going to do here is just have a moment of collective healing, collective acknowledgement of your grief, of your loss. Collective healing, collective acknowledgement. Collective love, collective love. So just put them in the chat and just acknowledge these people, individuals. Collective love. So, thank you for taking that time. All those who you acknowledged. And that's what it is. It's that collective healing, that collective love that we all have for each other. I see on your chat, you don't even know each other, or some of you do. But we're all coming together now, taking this time right here now to heal, to love, to acknowledge. And in this way too, this is sacred space and sacred time. And in this, even this little time right here, we can, this is ceremony. And maybe some of you have just, you just started that grieving process. And some of you have just started that healing process. Thank you, yes. And Sister put on here, I'm honored to be with all of you on here, because it's just not me, it's just, we're all on here together. Those of you all in your chats right here, we're all in this together. So, my brothers and sisters, my relatives, I just want to say thank you for this time, this moment that we've had here just to talk about grief, loss, and healing. And think about those ways that you need to do for yourself to heal. Just go out for a walk. I got my dog right here. Cuddle with your dogs or your loved ones. Burn some sage, sweetgrass. Get your drum out, sing a song. And when you sing a song, just not only for yourself, but just sing it for our other relatives out there too. In Indian country, I'm going to ask you all, let's start singing our songs. Let's burn the smudge. Let's start this process now. The healing process for all of our Indian people across Turtle Island here. So when that process does come, when that grieving process and ceremony, we can start pulling and doing ceremony that for these memorials and these burials and everything that's going on, that the medicine is already in the air, in the land, in the waters, because we're praying it right now. Because we're praying it right now. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And my name is Gene Tagaban. I'm of the Duxdane Ton. I'm the child of a Wishkatan. I'm Cherokee. My ancestors come before the Trail of Tears from that place that's called Georgia, Tennessee, and I'm also part Filipino. My grandfather comes from Batak, and my great-grandfather comes from Ilocos Norte, and all my relatives are with me right now. And so are yours. This is the Native Wellness Institute. Wado, Gonachish, Salamat Po, my brothers and sisters, my relatives, much love to you. Healing, healing, healing. We're the survivors. We'll be telling the stories. Pass them on. So until next time, take care of yourselves. Be gentle with yourselves. Oh.